What if the turning point of an empire began not with clashing swords or marching armies, but with the quiet refusal of a single woman? One moment, one decision, one courageous stand that shattered royal pride and set unseen purposes into motion. In the days when King Xerxes ruled over a vast dominion stretching from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces bound beneath his authority, his throne stood in the fortified city of Susa, radiant with wealth and splendor. The empire was unmatched in power, its armies feared, its treasuries overflowing. Marble columns lined the palace courts, tapestries woven in royal hues draped the walls, gold and silver gleamed beneath torchlight. To display the glory of his reign, Xerxes commanded a celebration unlike any before it. For 180 days, nobles, governors, military commanders, and princes from every province gathered in Susa. The banquet was not born of hunger, but of pride. It was an exhibition of power, of riches poured out like water, of influence paraded like jewels. Goblets of gold, each unique in design, were filled without restraint. The finest wines flowed freely, and every guest was permitted to drink according to his desire. When those long months ended, the king opened the palace gardens to all the people of Susa, both great and small, for a final feast lasting 7 days. White and violet linens hung from silver rings fastened to marble pillars. Couches of gold and silver rested upon pavements of porphyry and precious stones. Laughter echoed beneath the open sky. In another hall of the palace, Queen Vashti hosted her own banquet for the women. She too bore the dignity of royalty. She too wore a crown. On the 7th day, when the king's heart was lifted high by wine and pride, he summoned his eunuchs with a command that revealed the condition of his soul. "Bring Queen Vashti before me," he ordered, "wearing her royal crown, that the people and the nobles may behold her beauty." It was not honor he sought, but display, not respect, but spectacle. The command traveled through corridors of polished stone until it reached the queen, and there, within her chamber, a decision was made that would shake the empire. She refused. No lengthy speech, no rebellion of armies, only a simple refusal to be paraded before drunken eyes. When the message returned to the king, the music faltered, conversations dimmed, pride turned to humiliation, and humiliation ignited into fury. Xerxes, ruler of nations, had been defied within his own palace. His advisors, men skilled in law and strategy, perceived danger not merely in the queen's absence, but in its implication. If the queen's refusal went unanswered, they reasoned, women throughout the empire would despise their husbands. Authority itself would be questioned. Let a royal decree be issued, they counseled, that Vashti be removed from her position and that her royal estate be given to another more worthy than she. Let it be proclaimed in every province, in every language, that every man shall rule in his own house. Pride answered pride. The decree was sealed and dispatched across the vast empire. Vashti was stripped of her crown, her place erased from the palace. The throne beside the king stood empty. But heaven was not empty. Though no voice thundered from the skies, though no prophet stood in the court, unseen purposes were already unfolding. Years passed, and the absence of a queen became an unspoken reminder of loss. The king's attendants, eager to restore favor to his spirit, proposed a search throughout the provinces. Let beautiful young women be gathered into the palace, they suggested. Let them undergo preparation, and the one who pleased the king most would become queen in Vashti's place. Messengers were sent to distant lands. From cities and villages, from quiet homes and bustling markets, young women were taken into the royal custody. Among them was a young Jewish woman named Hadassah,
known in the Persian tongue as Esther. She had known sorrow early in life. Her parents were gone, and she had been raised by her cousin Mordecai, who loved her as a daughter. In exile, far from Jerusalem, among foreign customs and foreign gods, he had taught her the stories of their people, the covenant of Abraham, the deliverance from Egypt, the faithfulness of the Lord through generations of trial. "Never forget who you are," he would remind her gently. "Though we dwell in a strange land, we belong to the God of our fathers." Esther carried those words in her heart. When she was brought into the palace, she entered a world of perfume and rivalry. The women prepared themselves for 12 months, 6 months with oil of myrrh, 6 with fragrant spices, each hoping to captivate the king. Some sought elaborate adornments, jewels and gowns chosen with careful ambition. Esther asked for nothing beyond what was appointed to her. There was a quiet strength about her, a grace not born of ambition, but of humility. Those who encountered her found themselves drawn not merely to her appearance, but to her spirit. When her turn came to stand before the king, she walked into the royal chamber clothed not in extravagance, but in dignity. Xerxes beheld her, and something in her countenance distinguished her from the rest. Favor rested upon her. The crown was placed upon her head, and a new queen was proclaimed throughout the empire. A banquet was held in her honor, and gifts were distributed across the provinces. Yet Esther carried a secret. At Mordecai's instruction, she had not revealed her heritage. Her identity as a Jew remained concealed. She wore the crown of Persia, yet she belonged to another people, another promise. While Esther dwelt within palace walls, Mordecai remained near the king's gate, a place of officials and petitions. There, amid the dust and daily transactions, he overheard a plot. 2 royal guards, embittered and reckless, whispered of assassinating the king. Mordecai did not hesitate. He sent word to Esther, who informed Xerxes, giving credit to Mordecai. The matter was investigated, the conspirators executed. The event was recorded in the royal chronicles, and then forgotten. No reward, no public honor, only ink on parchment. But heaven does not forget what men overlook. Meanwhile, another figure was ascending in influence, Haman, son of Hammedatha. The king elevated him above all other officials, granting him authority second only to the throne. Everywhere Haman passed, servants bowed low. All bowed, except one, Mordecai. Day after day, as others bent their knees, Mordecai remained standing, not out of arrogance, but conviction. He would bow to his God alone.
When Haman learned that Mordecai was a Jew, his indignation expanded into hatred. It was not enough to punish one man. He would annihilate an entire people. With calculated speech, he approached the king. "There is a certain people scattered among your provinces," he said carefully. "Their laws differ from those of every other nation. They do not keep the king's laws. It is not beneficial to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued for their destruction." Silver was offered. Pride was appealed to. The king removed his signet ring and placed it into Haman's hand. The decree was written and sent throughout the empire. On a designated day, the Jews, men, women, and children, were to be destroyed. When the proclamation reached Susa, confusion gripped the city. Across the provinces, Jewish communities wept. Sackcloth replaced garments of joy. Ashes marked their mourning. Mordecai clothed himself likewise and stood outside the palace gate, crying out in anguish. When Esther learned of his distress, she sent garments to him, but he refused. Through a messenger, he revealed the decree and urged her to intervene. She hesitated. To approach the king uninvited was punishable by death unless he extended the golden scepter.
Mordecai's reply carried solemn weight. "Do not imagine that you will escape because you are in the palace. If you remain silent, relief will arise from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Those words settled deep within her soul. Was her crown merely fortune or calling? She resolved to act. "Gather all the Jews in Susa," she sent word. "Fast for me 3 days and nights. My attendants and I will fast also. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." Throughout the city, prayers ascended in silence. Hunger sharpened dependence. Fear wrestled with faith. On the 3rd day, Esther clothed herself in royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace. The king sat upon his throne. She stepped forward. Time seemed to suspend itself. The hall was still. Then the king extended the golden scepter. Life. She approached and touched its tip. "What is your request, Queen Esther? Even to half the kingdom it shall be granted." With wisdom, she did not reveal everything at once. She invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. They came, they feasted, and again the king asked her request. She invited them to return the following day. That night, sleep fled from Xerxes. He ordered the chronicles of his reign to be read aloud. As the record was recited, the account of Mordecai's uncovered plot was mentioned. "What honor has been given to this man?" the king asked. "Nothing has been done," came the reply. At that very moment, Haman entered the court to request permission to hang Mordecai on gallows he had prepared. Before Haman could speak, the king posed a question. What should be done for the man whom the king delights to honor? Believing himself to be the subject, Haman described elaborate honors, a royal robe, the king's horse, public proclamation. "Excellent," said Xerxes. "Do so for Mordecai the Jew." The words struck like thunder. Haman, humiliated, led Mordecai through the city, proclaiming his honor. The gallows he had built stood waiting, unaware they would soon bear another. At the second banquet, Esther revealed her plea. "If I have found favor," she said, her voice steady, "grant me my life and spare my people. We have been sold to destruction." The king's fury ignited. "Who is he?" She pointed. "This adversary, this enemy, is Haman." The king stormed into the garden. Haman, terrified, begged Esther for mercy. When the king returned and saw Haman fallen near the queen, his wrath was sealed. Haman was executed upon the very gallows he had prepared. Yet the decree remained. Persian law could not be revoked. Once more, Esther interceded. Once more, she risked all. The king granted Mordecai authority to issue a new decree. The Jews were permitted to defend themselves. On the appointed day, fear shifted. Those who had sought their destruction were overcome. The Jews stood together and prevailed. Sorrow turned to rejoicing. What had been marked for death became a celebration of life. A festival was established, Purim, so that generations would remember how mourning was transformed into gladness, how despair was overturned by deliverance. Mordecai rose in influence, clothed in royal garments of blue and white. Esther's courage was spoken of throughout the empire. Through every twist of events, the name of God was not spoken aloud, yet his hand was evident. In sleepless nights, in forgotten records, in reversed fortunes. An orphan became a queen, and condemned people were preserved. Pride was humbled. Faith was vindicated. And perhaps even now, in places unseen, destinies are forming quietly. Perhaps you stand where you are not by accident, but by appointment, for such a time as this.